Yes. Outstanding. Great.
Wow.
All right.
Well, that makes a little more sense because I've been on
terrific.
the other end of that. All right. So we actually had a caller call in during that question. So I figure we'll just take them right now, and then we can take the rest of the questions. All right.
Okay.
Sure.
This caller told me his name is Jimmy, the guitar player from Canada. So Jimmy, the guitar player, welcome to the show.
Oh, perfect. Jimmy, long time no see.
Hi, everyone.
I think Jen wants to talk to him.
I definitely want to talk to Jimmy.
All right, Jimmy.
What's going on?
Let it roll. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Long-time listener. Love the show.
Hold on. That just sounds like Jimmy. Just he's swaggering into the con. He's already swaggering in.
Hey, Doug, hush.
All right.
Let the man talk.
Go ahead.
So I have a question about marriage. And Dr. Lisle, you've spoken about how marriage doesn't necessarily fit the way that pair bonding would have worked in the Stone Age environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, in this day and age, if two people do decide to wed, are there any safeguards that either of you would recommend to put in place for ensuring the best outcome? So, for instance, you've mentioned in order to stop eating junk food, you don't keep any in the house. Is there an equivalent of that for marriage? Because my girlfriend's not really particularly fond of the wife chippy strategy.
Well, she shouldn't be marrying Jimmy, the guitar player.
Yeah. All right, Jen, why don't you take a pass at that? And while I think, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that there's no universal answer to that question at all, that it has everything to do with your personalities and sort of what your tolerance thresholds are for I would immediately sort of think of the chippy question and open marriages and polyamory and all of these things, which are kind of some type of safeguard. I put that in big quotes for certain kinds of marriages for the right kinds of personalities. So, one of the other really well-known evolutionary psychologists in this field is Jeffrey Miller at the University of New Mexico, and he just married his long-term girlfriend, and they are very openly polyamorous, and it's a big part of what makes their relationship successful, and they have a lot to say on that, so that they're an interesting resource for that particular question. But obviously that's not a solution that works for everybody. It doesn't work for every personality. So I think that the best thing that I would give to this, if there's not anything structural that you can do in that sort of sense, is to just make the best use of all of the different little clinical practices that we have, just to make sure that you're, I again put this in really big quotes because this is a terrible phrase, but, good communication, i.e. you're practicing something approximating what we call crystal clear when you run into conflict. So you're not letting things turn into bad feedback loops, essentially. So that's the main thing that you want to be watching for, especially around issues of jealousy or perceived cheating or perceived chippies or anything like that. So just keeping that sort of a quasi-institutionalized practice in the relationship to just raise those issues as they come up and crystal clear the hell out of them, and just make sure that you're really on the same page about that all the time. That would be the main kind of general piece of advice that I would have, not knowing anything about what kind of personalities we're dealing with and what sort of tolerance level you would have for different structural changes to the relationship and what those might look like.
Yeah.
Perfect. Very helpful.
Still there? Did I lose everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I would add one more thing that I can think of, and and this is a this is a little brutal, but it's worth thinking through, and that is that I suggest to women that even though this is this may go straight across your life plan and what it feels like that you would like to do and what you think would optimize your existence. But I would suggest that you make sure that you become skilled and educated enough that you can support yourself.
That's very important. So you're never in a position of weakness.
Yeah. You don't want to live your life in a position of weakness. And you also want to be in a situation not only that you don't want to be in a position of weakness, you don't want to be a burden on the other side of this where someone wants to leave you, but they can't afford to because they can't afford to support you and themselves in a new relationship. And so what I'm really getting at is a grisly truth that we're going to look down the barrel of this thing, and we're going to be courageous about this, which is the one of the best things that you can do for your life in general and for any relationship is to essentially get out if it's lousy. Okay? So the notion is here isn't that the idea here is, listen, you don't want to waste your opportunity to have an outstanding life experience, and you don't want to waste your partner's either. And so the notion is that you don't want to be in a situation where you're doing somebody a favor and you're choking on your own desires for freedom because we either can't afford it financially or we feel like they can't afford it emotionally. So the notion, I would recommend that anybody contemplating getting married reads How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Brown. And that is a manifesto of human freedom, including within relationships and the general principles by which to approach all relationships in life in general. And behind that, ironically, Harry comes down very negatively on marriage, okay? And then, of course, what's quite ironic is he gets married twice after he writes that book. Okay?
Deep breath.
So,
love is a hell of a drug.
No. So my attitude is, of course, there's nothing in the world wrong in principle with getting married, and I'm not anti-marriage at all. What I am, and what I want to warn people is this is a 50-year decision you're making with a 5-year chip, and so you can be making a wise, intelligent, and mature choice. And in the modern world, it can involve basically total integration of both finances as well as child raising, et cetera. And in doing so, it's putting barriers to exit and an interdependence on these two people that it never had in the Stone Age. So the barriers to exit are astronomically high. They are nothing like they were in the nature of the animal. And so as a result, because those barriers are so high, you have a lot of people choking down year after year of their lives, frustrated and miserable. Okay. Now we see how true this is. I mean, I'm always just amazed at the sort of right-wing conservative lamenting of the breakdown of the family. It's like, are you people out of your minds? This should be celebrated. This is absolute evidence of the greater economic power of women, the less dependency of children and their welfare on a man and his provisioning capacities, and basically freeing people from each other so that they can say, hey, and it isn't, quote, a mistake because you're getting a divorce. That doesn't mean your marriage was a mistake. It means it ran its course. It had its 5-year run that it was designed to have. Or it was a mistake that we found out later that we weren't well suited to each other. So what? Okay. Why is it that when this happens when you're 22, it's a breakup of a boyfriend and girlfriend, but those two same people at 24 years old when they get married and 2 years later they want to break up, oh, it's a divorce. Oh, my God, we got to talk to the deacon and we're going to have the in-laws involved and this is big freaking crisis. Why? Okay. That's because people are gutless and they aren't thinking through any of these things that we're talking about. So,
well, and also just to really quickly interrupt, I think a lot of that is also won't someone please think of the children and this idea that children, once you've had kids, this is a lot of what the religious right and the breakdown in the family is about, that basically the taken at face value notion that children are going to be completely destroyed for life by a divorce and by single parentdom. And I hear some like really smart people on the right talking about this. I was just listening to Heather McDonald talk about it the other day, where she she's putting it forth as if this is as solid evidence that children are going to grow up to be super compromised if they grow up in a single parent home, and there's just no evidence for that. So that's what a lot of that is. Go back to the general point that I think that's a big thing to also keep in mind when you're deciding to bind your life up with somebody else, that don't let your personality keep you in it, don't let financial dependence keep you in it, and don't let the kids keep you in it.
Right. God, thank goodness Jen's here with us to remind me of these things, because I so don't think of that. I don't even consider it. But of course, that's a huge consideration that I talk to people about often, because they're contemplating this and they're worried about the impact on the children. And of course, my immediate reaction is, don't even think about that. It's no impact on the children at all. Okay. Of course, just like any short-term adjustment that's scary, children could be wailing and very upset, but this is absolutely short-term, and there's no impact at all ever has been demonstrated in any scientific literature. It's exceedingly clear that there is no problem. Okay, so incidentally, the research that any of the right cites is all correlational research, which is a huge mistake. You cannot do the research that way. Okay, so
no, it all is.
So no, it's all wrong. So no, the evidence is very clear from anybody that's looking at the research right side up that there's no long-term impact on any known dimension from that process. So there you go. So my thing is maybe like it's talking about a psychotherapist with 30 years experience. Okay, what am I thinking? I'm thinking, careful about the exit. Okay. Careful about be thinking about, that we're not going to go in blind here and assuming that if we have a good attitude and say positive thoughts and affirmations every day, that we're going to just manage to avoid the lurking serious possibility that this relationship has a very different character 10 years from now than it does now. Okay. So if we feel like, no, I want to do this, I feel like it's right, I feel like I can, I think there's a good chance that myself and my partner could be among a modest-sized minority that is really happy very long term. Is it possible? It absolutely is possible. Is it even plausible? Yes. Okay. If you have wise, intelligent, mature choice, and it turns out that, you're not, God help you if you're 22 and doing this, but if you're 34 and doing this, you've seen the world a little bit, you know yourself quite a bit better, and you know life better, and you may be ready to make that choice. However, don't don't stick our heads in the sand about the possibility that we may want to go our separate ways at some point. And if we do, if we want to, we want to be able to do so. And so keep that in mind, and keep in mind that really we would hope that there would be nothing that would stop you from leaving if you wanted to leave. That's about the most important thing that I can say about getting married.
Wow. Jimmy, the guitar player from Canada, thank you very, very much for that great question.
I did have a follow-up, Nate, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
So in my own experience, from an anecdotal standpoint, the 5-year chip seems to have a lot of truth to it. I was just wondering, where did that number come from? Is it derived from studying hunter-gatherer tribes? Is it just an estimation?
5-year-olds. A 5-year-old is pretty competent. So once you've had a kid and it's about 5 years old, it's going to keep itself mostly alive in a Stone Age village kind of context. So you don't need the support as much as you did. So it's evolutionarily more sound to diversify the gene pool at that point than to continue in your same pair bond.
Yeah.
Got it.
So nobody. These incidentally are. These are all sort of estimations, looking at observations of people's mating behavior. So Helen Fisher has called, she'll argue that it's 7 years, So whatever, Helen. So I think everybody likes that because there was the famous phrase,
7-year
itch. And I came up with 5 years because I like how it's got alliteration with you're trying to make a 50-year decision with a 5-year chip. Okay, that's the way. So, but the truth of the matter is that it's actually based on precisely what Jen is saying, which is the critical period is pregnancy and a couple, 2 or 3 years afterwards, when the child is very young. Super important that it has heavy paternal investment at that point. And as the child gets 3, 4, 5 years old, the risk is now much less. And as a result, the critical need for the guy being in love with her and she being in love with him winds up being evolutionarily less important.
Mm-hmm. I think the 7-year itch is basically when the 5-year chip. The 5-year chip is when it expires, and it takes another 2 years with personality and all of the all this financial garbage and everything else that we're talking about to actually take action on it.
Yeah, it starts itching at 5 years, but it doesn't get scratched for 2 more years. That's it.
Exactly. Right. Maybe not till year 8.
All right.
Well, Jimmy,
thank you.
Thank you
Terrific.
very much for the phone call. Really appreciate it. Great question.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my question.
All right. Good night, Jimmy.
You bet.
Yeah. Have a good night.
All right. So, one thing that
Jen's
you said, Dr. Lisle and Dr. Howk, what's that?
Jen's all happy. Got to talk to
Jen's
Jimmy,
all happy because we had Jimmy, the guitar player, call in. Although he's getting married, so a hell of a lot of good that does me.
Oh well,
any other Jimmys that want to call in tonight? The phone lines are open.